Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. The Federal Reserve rolls out its sixth interest rate hike this year. What's coming next? NTD's Iris Tao has more on what the Fed and the White House are saying about the economy.
Another aggressive hike. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday announced a fourth straight rate hike of 0.75 of a percentage point, bringing rates to a level unseen since 2008. Its goal is to tame the white-hot inflation, but as a direct impact on Americans' wallets, it'll make it even more expensive to get a mortgage and pay off credit card debt. Here's Fed Chair Jerome Powell talking about it today.
The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship.
And now the big question is, when will this end? Here's what Powell said.
It's very premature, in my view, to think about or be talking about pausing our rate hike. We have a ways to go.
And another big question is recession. In other words, what's the likelihood of a soft landing in which rate hikes do not lead to a recession? Powell said this.
Has it narrowed? Yes. Is it still possible? Yes. I would say the path has narrowed over the course of the last year, really.
And on the politics side, some Senate Democrats sent a letter this week urging the Fed to stop hiking rates to avoid a recession. And Republicans taking aim at Biden, with Senator Marsha Blackburn calling today's Fed announcement further proof of the consequences of socialism via Biden spending. Meanwhile, right after the Fed announcement, President Biden held the job market at a White House event while saying this about the economy.
Inflation is still hurting people. But we're making real progress. I've been more optimistic about the future than I ever have been. Ever in my career, I've been more optimistic than today.
And as midterms approach, the White House is increasingly shifting its focus to touting its economic policies and attacking Republicans. Biden's giving a primetime speech tonight. The White House says he'll call out MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
President Biden is again taking issue with big oil companies, floating a new tax that will threaten their bottom lines. Is more taxing the answer amidst record high inflation? Grover Norquist is president of Americans for Tax Reform, and we're happy to have him on to discuss. Grover Norquist, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Grover, President Biden accuses oil and gas companies of what he's calling war profiteering as they post record profits. The president has floated the idea of new taxes on oil companies. What's your reaction to this?
The president is looking at having caused a very bad election for his own party. He has created inflation from almost nothing up to 8-9%. He is flailing around trying to blame somebody else. He announced it was his intention to shut down oil production and fracking and new exploration, all things which raise the cost of energy, raise the cost of gasoline, make it expensive at the pump. His entire presidency has been aimed at making gasoline too expensive for people. And then he turns around and blames Putin or oil companies, which are struggling under his regulations and his taxes. If you want to reduce the price of gasoline at the pump, reduce those state and federal taxes, which are higher than any profits any company makes.
Speaking of taxes, starting this year, some provisions of the TCJA Trump-era tax cuts will expire, which may have a significant impact on corporate investment decisions. One of them, the 100% bonus depreciation for businesses. There's also a switch to 5-year amortization of R&D expenses. Do you expect Congress to extend these provisions or make them permanent?
I think it's very possible that we will extend expensing and everything that moves towards expensing. This is actually one of the good pro-growth policies that in the past the Democrats have supported under John F. Kennedy, under Reagan, the Democrats endorsed expensing. So of all the things in the Republican tax cut that might be continued if the Democrats want to do something good for growth, that might happen.
Grover, how will the elections affect the fate of Trump's tax cuts and the overall direction of the economy?
Sure. Well, you can look at this. You go back to when Clinton was elected, spent too much, taxed too much, lost the House and Senate. The Republicans stripped most of his new spending out. Then you had Obama. He got elected with the Congress, and he spent too much and taxed too much. And then the Republicans insisted on making the Bush tax cuts completely extended for 2 years, and then 85% of them made permanent after 2 years. So I think you may see something very much like that, where the Republicans say, the economy has been so damaged by you that let's extend these tax cuts. Remember, most of this tax cut goes to middle-income people, the child tax credit, lower rates. And I know that Biden likes to say that's not who's hit, but if he allows those to lapse, the American people will see exactly who was benefited by the Republican tax cuts. And if the president vetoes fixing that, a much smarter politician than Biden, Obama, decided to extend it for 2 years, thinking, well, maybe we'll win and we can kill it then. But then he had to extend it, at least 85% of it, permanently into the future. I think something very much like that will happen. It's possible that Biden will lash out because, he doesn't quite understand economics very well, and he's not going to be in president for very long. But very likely that the important pro-growth parts will be continued because they're so important.
Now, with the Fed appearing to prepare for another rate hike of 75 basis points, what will higher taxes mixed with rising interest rates or rising interest rate environment potentially mean?
Well, it's very bad for the economy. It's very bad for growth. It's bad for the stock market. We have a lot of mistakes that the Democrats made, or not mistakes, they did it on purpose. The taxes on energy, the taxes on investment, the things that make your 401k and IRA smaller. What Biden and the Democrats, and every single Democrat voted with him, so it's not just Biden doing this, but the entire Democrat Party in the House and Senate voted to make your 401k and IRA smaller, your life savings. That's 58% of Americans have had their life savings damaged by the Democratic Party. Just in 2 years. In 2 years, they've done that. They've done the same thing to the cost of gasoline and home heating oil for every American. Biden likes to say he's only going to, tax rich people, but he raises the cost of gasoline, and he's not an idiot. He knows that every American drives and needs to heat their house and have air conditioning in the summer. And so the taxes that the Democrats and Biden have put in hit everyone, and those are going to get worse and worse as his regulations, his bans and regulation of fracking, his effort to not allow new refineries or pipelines. All of these are designed to raise the cost of gasoline, home heating oil, natural gas, and they are succeeding. They're doing exactly what Biden wanted to do, which was price that out of the range of average Americans' ability to pay for it.
Grover Norquist, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Former Connecticut State Representative Michael Damasa is pleading guilty to stealing $1.2 million in federal coronavirus relief funds. The stolen federal funds that were intended to reimburse the city of West Haven, Connecticut, for COVID-19 expenditures. Prosecutors allege that 31-year-old Michael Damasa used his position as a state representative and an aide to the West Haven City Council to steal the funds, some of which he spent on gambling. Damasa resigned from positions as a state official after being arrested last year. And Damasa's wife and his former business partner have also pleaded guilty. A sentencing date for Damasa has not yet been set. The Biden administration is accusing the North Korean regime of secretly supplying Russia with military equipment to support its war in Ukraine. This is according to newly declassified intelligence. Biden officials say North Korea made the shipments look like they were sent to countries in the Middle East and North Africa. John Kirby from the National Security Council insisted that the shipments would not change the course of the war, and the White House is still monitoring whether the shipments actually made it to Russia. And staying in the Korean Peninsula, North Korea today firing 23 missiles, one of them landing close to South Korea's territorial waters for the first time since the two Koreas split. In response, South Korea fired 3 air-to-surface missiles just hours later. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.